So wait, was it the temperature was like it's like the hundreds or something?
Yeah, the highest I think we've gotten in this part of Texas is about 110, but it can
Mm,
get it can get even hotter than that.
mm,
Yeah,
wow.
it's gotten up to 110.
But you know the thing is, that Middle East heat, that thing could get up to 120.
Yeah, yeah, that's so we in practice.
Yeah.
We-
So they say like out in like Saudi, out in those places, you get like 135. You know, it's just like you just
yeah, well, you
die.
know, yeah, it's kind of like Arizona, but
Wait,
I think
Arizona gets to 130?
they get hot. They get up to about 120.
Ooh,
Remember, that's the desert. That's
I think so. I really think they get up there. I'm not
yeah,
saying
they
they say
get up.
how hot, but they definitely get hotter than us.
Well, I know. I don't know if it was last year, but the year before it last. I mean, there were records being broken all over the country. We were under like what was called a heat dome.
Oh yeah, that's
Mm,
true.
You know,
mm,
so
mm,
the potential is always there.
mm. Okay, so we're going to I mean we're adventuring, we're moving around, right? And so we want to I want to start with like the thing that the emphasis that I'm in right now is what's the process of this journey, right? What is this process of the journey from Egypt to Mount Sinai? You know, from Pesach to Shavuot. Like, what is this journey? What does this entail? And where can we look back in history that kind of gives us an insight to this type of a journey, right? Because what we're talking about is a spiritual journey, right? It wasn't so much about where they had to get to, but more so what they were trying to accomplish, right? And that process of what they were trying to accomplish is what I'm really honing in on, and just bringing different perspectives, different concepts, challenging thoughts. So I want to start with this idea. Okay, hold on. So we're in Genesis, right? And this is inspired a conversation I was having earlier with Otino. All right, so okay, so it says like this. We're in Genesis chapter 11. So it says, Ve'ahi na'or acharei choledot et terach tatza'a asrei shana. So he says, after the birth. So this is the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu, God Almighty. They're trying to teach us something. So he says, after the birth of Terach, Noah lived 119 years and beget sons and daughters. So you have Terach here, right? And this is Abraham's father. So his father is Nahar, right? And Nahar, sorry, Nahar. And so it's interesting. If you read in English as Nahar, but Hebrew says Nahar, right? Nahar, he that's Abraham's grandfather, right? And so he now lived 29 years, and he gave. So I guess he lived a relatively. It's interesting that his father only lived 29 years because this is his great grandfather. Oh, okay. So he lived into the show. Okay, I was reading it different. All right, so just go back a little bit. This is interesting. Ve'ahi shagu. That's Abraham's great grandfather. Okay, and Nahar is his grandfather, and his father is Terach, right? And so it says here, after the birth of Terach, Nahar lived 119 years, but he had birth with him when he was 29 years. Why that is important exactly? It's interesting. I don't know. So maybe there's reasons, conclusions, time frames, this type of thing. So it says, Ve'echi, he lived, Ve'echi Tarak Shevi'im Shana. So Tarak lived 70 years, and he beget, so he had kids a little bit later, it seems like, than his father. His father had 29, he's at 70. So Terach lived 70 years and he begot Avraham, Nahor, and Haran. So I guess he named the second son, or at least the order they're giving us, after his grandfather, right? And Haran, right? So this is Avraham, and he lives here, right? This is his family. He has cousins, nephews, nieces. Ve'ela Torot Tarak Holid Ed Avram. So he says, and now this is the line of Tarak. So these are the generations. So he says line here, but it says Torah, generations of Tarak. Tarak begot Abraham. Tarak begot Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran beget Lot. So Lot's now in the equation, right? So it says Vaya Mat Haran Alifene. So Haran died, right, in his lifetime of his father, and Tarak lived in his native land called Earl Kasdim. Let's maybe adventure a little bit. We're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere. Okay, so what happened, right? So we go to Rashi. Rashi brings a midrash, right? So he talks about him dying in the presence of his father. What does this mean? It says the meaning of in his father's lifetime, right? The meaning during his father's life. So that's what he means. See, the midrash explains, and keep in mind, the midrash is there to give us not. It's not like a secret history, you know. It's something that the sages have written to give us a new cognitive way to read the pasuk, right? Like meaning that what is the pasuk really saying if the midrash is saying like this? So the midrash challenges us to understand the written Torah in a deeper way, but we don't use the midrash as like, oh well, this is it. Even though we believe that the principles of the midrash were also revealed on Mount Sinai, along with the Mishnah and everything else. But the point is just saying that the written expression in the words themselves, is a technology to bring out of the pasuk. So it says the midrash explains that he died through his father. For Tarak accused his son Abram before Nimrod of having smashed his idols to pieces, and he cast them into the furnace. Into a fury furnace. So Nimrod heard about Abraham smashing the things, and so Nimrod, as we know the story, he threw Abraham in a furnace. He says Haran waited and said to himself, if Abraham proves triumphant, I will be on his side. If Nimrod wins, I shall be on his side. When Abraham was saved, they said to Haran, whose side are you on? And Haran replied, I am on Abraham's side, and therefore cast him into the furious furnace, and he was burnt to death. And this was the name of the place, or Custim, the fire of Chaldees. Alludes to, it says in Rabbah, he says, however, explains that the or means the valley, the glory of the valley, glory, the Lord in the valley, Amrim, and then he says in Isaiah, the din, okay, Amrot, of the bris they call, or I'm not sure exactly what I guess they're trying to explain or Kazdim in a deeper way. But the point is, the Midrash brings out this idea that when we talk about Abraham's brother, Haran died off of this whole experience connected to it. So when the Torah says, he says Haran died in the lifetime of his father in his native land. And so that's how the Midrash explains it. That was just simply he died, but it was a whole situation. And this whole situation kind of gives us an insight to Avraham and his level. So the Torah is bringing this point, because why is it, he died in his father's lifetime. Why the wording? Right? That's what the sages are going off of. Why the wording? And so the Torah is using the specific wording because it's giving some. So it says, Ve'ichach Avraham ve'Nahar lechem nasim Hashem. So he says, Avraham and Nahor took wives for themselves, the name of Abraham's wife being Sarah, and that of Nahor's wife, Micah. Mika, Mika, Malika. Hold on, let me see it in Hebrew. Hold on. Mm. Yeah, so it's Malika. Yeah, Malika. Okay, fine, Malika. It's like almost like Malka, Malika. Sorry. So he says the daughter of Haron and the father of Malika and okay, so just read this again. So Avraham took wives for themselves. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarai, and the wife of Nahor's wife was Malika, the daughter of Haran, the father of Malika and wait. So what's going on here? Why do they have a different name? Let's see what's going on. Hold on. So because I'm a little confused right here because right now they're saying Sarah, that of Nahar's wife, Malika. Okay, the daughter of Haran and the father of Malika and its other name. It's Yiska. So is Yiska, is that Sarah? What's going on? So Rashi has the same question. He says, this was Sarah. She was also named Yiska, from the root meaning to see, to look, because she could see the future by holy inspiration. And because everyone looked glazed at her beauty, it says in Megillah. The name Yiska also refers to princessy dignity. And he says, in just as the name Sarah is alludes to Sarah, to ruling. Okay. All right, so we're building, we're getting somewhere. We got to walk with this. They say, walk with me. Okay, so she couldn't. So Vea. He says, but he Sarai achara ein la velad. So Sarah was barren; she couldn't have children. Veyichach, right? So veyichach terach Avraham beino ve'et Lot ben Haran. So he says, Terach took his son. He took his son Abraham and his daughter and Lot, the son of Haran, and his daughter Sarai, and his wife of his son Abraham, and they set out from Ur Kasdim and for the land of Canaan. But they settled, he says, but when they came to Haran, they settled there. Okay, so this is a very important point, right? And we're building somewhere. So they were in Ur Kasdim and they were going to Canaan, right? They were coming to Israel, right? They were coming to Israel. So the question is, why were they coming to Israel? So let's see if we could see a little commentary. We could talk it out. I mean, it's right in front of us, right? But I wanted to just see. Hold on. Okay, so we have our favorite, the Or Chaim. Okay, so Terah took his son Abraham. Okay, so this is the Or Chaim. We talk about him. You saw me at his gravesite, the whole thing. He says we must understand this verse as an extension of a popular proverb in Baba Metzia. So he says we have to understand this verse that Terach took his son Abraham. He says quoted in Baba Metzia. So he said this is the extension of a verse in Proverbs. And he's quoted in this context in Baba Metzia. So he says, by here you understand this verse better, why it's saying this. That is, if someone experiences bad luck in one location and he does not move to another location, he only has himself to blame if that bad luck continues. If Tarak realized that his son Abraham did not beget children in Ur Kasdim, and he left the direction to the land of Canaan to see if his luck would improve. The Torah shows us that Abraham was so important in the eyes of other members of his families, of his father's household, that they all joined in a migration in order to stay close to him. This is why the Torah adds the word Vetzi'ul atem, and they immigrated with them. Okay, so that's what the Or Chaim's holding out on that. All right, hold on. Let's go a little bit further. Okay. Okay. So this idea of they departed with him, right? So he said they departed with him. Vetiu atema meor kasdim. Or Chasdim. So they all left from Or Chasdim. So he says they departed from there with them. Rashi explains the plural mode Vitziu refers to Tarak and Abraham, Lot and Sarah and Abraham's wife. I find his commentary difficulty to accept as he represents the majority personality of the story. Avraham is secondary to the minor player Tarach. This is something most unusual. So he's saying, why is it referring to Tarach took Avraham? He says, furthermore, according to Rashi's interpretation, why would Avraham pair with Tarach? For according to Rashi, Tarach was the principal in the verse, seeing that he has taken Avraham and Lot with him as well as Sarah. In the correct reading, it should have been Vitzia Terach Atem. Terach departed with them. He says Nachmanides writes that seeing that Abraham was more distinguished person than his father, and the only other people journeying with them, the Torah employs the plural mode that they went with them. Seeing that the Torah writes Terach had taken initiative in the immigrating to overlook as appeared as if Abraham had gone along with his father's decision in the matter. The other members of the entourage continued to travel with Abraham as their leader, also after Abraham left his father behind. Okay, so the point is like this. What we've established so far that we went through some of the genealogy. We went to some of the genealogy of Abraham's grandfather, his father, his grandfather, his great grandfather, and this process of how this kind of like community kind of developed in a way, meaning that, his brother Haran died and they all got together and they were connected and this whole thing. And there's even, and we know that, during this time, it wasn't just that, it wasn't just the fact that Sarah couldn't have a baby. It was like during that times when Abraham was teaching people about God then, he was highly rejected and people were against him, right? Like when he knocked over the idols and all that, that wasn't just the end of the situation. He was there challenging thought and the people rejected him, right? And so it says, Ve'ahivu yamei tarak chamesh shani umetayim shana ve'yamat. So he says, in the days of Tarak came to 205, and Tarak died in Haran. Okay. So we established that Abraham made big changes, right? He left a lot of people behind. He left his community behind. He left family members. There's a whole thing, right? He kept moving. So this is the part that we got to focus in on right here. All this was a build-up for this point right here. Vayomer Elohim al Abraham lech laka me arsecha umi lo detecha umi bed to uvi echa ala haaretz asher yitz sorry artsech. So he says, God says to Abraham, right? Right? God says to Abraham, go forth from your native land, from your father's house, into a land I will show you. Right? Oh, wait, hold on. Hold on. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. So he says, so God, whoa, hold on. All right. So he says, so God tells him to go forth, right? So let's look at this a little bit closely and let's talk this out. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. I just want to get one perspective before we really go into this. Show the Kliaker. Ooh, okay. Okay, so let's just do a little Orchaim and we're going to talk this out. So he says, Vayomer Hashem el Avraham. He says, God says to Avraham. So this is Orchaim. I just want us to just appreciate his reasoning and his thinking, right? This is thinking because we don't worship commentators, right? We just learn from them and get insight to help us understand and develop our own outlooks, right? Because that's the point, right? Just to learn to teach. He says there are two reasons for the person's unusual. He says there are two reasons for the most unusual phenomena of God speaking to Abraham without first appearing to him in some type of vision, right? So that's the first thing. So God speaks to Abraham, and keep in mind, Abraham's not a circumcised man at this point, right? He's not circumcised. He's not connected anything in that way. That supernatural level. Right? This is before the commandment of circumcision. So he's an uncircumcised man, and God speaking to him. So Or Chaim says, I want to understand. He says there are two reasons why this unusual phenomenon. The fact, he said, because God usually appears to people in visions, right? He says, but here he spoke. He says, one, Avraham consistent endeavor to get to know the Creator, something no one had ever done before him. According to our tradition, Abraham already recognized his creator at the age of 5 without even receiving any guidance from a teacher. And therefore, he did not have to prove his existence to Abraham by appearing to him in a vision. This is actually the Zohar says this. And he says, and he could take it for granted that Abraham was aware of who he was speaking. He says, God therefore did not have to prove the existence of Abraham by appearing to him in a vision. He could take it for granted that Abraham was aware of who he was, aware of who was he speaking to. I don't know, I couldn't say that. Anyway, so he's saying like this, he's saying that one reason why this came out of nowhere, like why did God speak to Abraham, right? He's saying because Abraham was already aware of God. He already was aware of God. He didn't need some miraculous vision or some type of miracle to get to that point, which kind of makes you wonder about the Moshe thing, because Moshe was a combination of both, no? And so he says like this. So he says, so that's one point. So he says the second point, he says, during the 10 generations since Noah that preceded Abraham, not a single human being had recognized God so that God had found him worthy to speak. Therefore, God decided to teach Abraham before speaking to him. He said he did this by demanding of Abraham that he leave his home. Only after he had successfully passed the test did God decide to reveal himself to Abraham in the vision, as we find in chapter 12, verse 7. He says God did not relate this manner to later generations because those generations had already absorbed the measures of faith in God through the example of the patriarch Abraham. And they were born into the environment of some sanctity in advance, not enjoined by Abraham. As a result, God was able to commence his communication with such people by granting them a vision before he speaks to them. In Psalm chapter 44, verse 11, the people who learn Psalms refer to Abraham's experience when he says, take heed, last the note, incline your ear, forget your people and your father's house. Okay, so he's bringing us Psalms right now. And what does this Psalm say? He says, take heed and take note, incline your ear, forget your people, your father's house. Our sages declare that the first half of the verse, Shemai, listen, Shema Israel. He says, listen, applies to listen to our patriarch to Abraham. When God spoke to him in chapter 12, verse 1, the second half of the verse where the Psalms speak about Dai, he says the vision experience referred to in chapter 12, verse 7, when God is reported to have had appeared to Abraham in a vision, the sound and the vision did not occur simultaneously. But to signify this, the Psalms did not say Shemati Yirei Bat, but they placed the word bat in the middle. and the proof for the correction of the view is compared with Moses' experience of the burning bush, when when a visual phenomenon of him speaking. So he says, "Go forth from your country." Why did God hear this? Why did God? He's going all this. He's going off of the Zohar, by the way, and I think Ochino probably knows. He says, "Why did God tell Abraham to leave his birthplace after he already did leave his birthplace? Surely leaving one's country includes leaving their birthplace. So he already did that, right? He said the Torah lists the departing according to the pain of leaving taking involved. It is less painful to leave one's country than to leave one's birthplace. And it is even more painful to leave one's family. And the Torah in Avraham is commanded to leave and ascend in order to the nostalgia involved. He says he's compelled with more difficulty. The most difficult part of the test is by leaving the parents' home in a manner of which the Torah describes and indicate Avraham received an additional reward each stage, as we similar describes gradually increasing difficulty of complying with God's command. And God told Abraham to take your son and your only one, the one you love. He's instructed. He's saying this later. Okay, so he keeps going into it, but I want to go to this point. So as we were already reading, God tells Abraham, go forth from your native land. He already did that. He already did that. He left for a cousin. That's where he was born. That the whole thing, the whole problem is he grew up, the whole drama, the whole thing, he left there. And he says, leave from your father's house. He already left it. His father died. His father's not even alive. And he says, Al ha'aretz asher aretzecha. And he says, and to the land that I will show you. Now the sages teach that obviously anyone who's reading the Pesukim can read that Abraham already did these things. That was the first level of his journey. What the Hashem is asking him, Lech Lecha, is to leave the thinking process of the land that you come from. Leave the thinking process of the people that you come, the house of your father, right? And go forth to a new reality that only I can show you. And in this new reality, what happens? He says, they are se'echa. He says, legoyim agadol. He says, and I will make you a great nation. Ve avara chechecha. He says, ve agadal. He says, and I will bless you. Avarachecha. And he says, ve gadal shemecha. He says, and I will make your name great. I will make your name great. And it says, ve'ahi bracha. And you shall be a blessing. Avarecha. Umuvarachetecha. So sorry. He says, me varachecha. So he says, and those that will bless you, who blesses you, umi kalachecha, he says they'll be blessed. Ha'orle nivaraku, vach, he says, and those who curse you will be cursed. He says, kol mishpokot. He says, ha'adama, and he says, and all the families in the world shall be blessed to you. Right? And so the point is saying that the first spiritual journey, the first person, the first model that we have of a journey, God is telling Avraham to leave behind all the mental connections, the thinking processes, the perceptions that you gain in the land. Leave your the Zohar goes even further when it says from your father's native land. He's saying it doesn't. Dafka says it doesn't. It's not. He's saying. He says umi molad te'echa. He's talking about the generation, the people. right? The native land. It's not land. Artseka would be Haaretz would be land. So he's talking about the generation. He's telling him to mentally leave his generation behind. Don't worry about them. Don't worry about where they're holding at. And he says from here, and leave your father's dynamic behind. That whole logic, the whole situation, and then I'm going to take you into a reality that you did not know about. I'm going to show you a land that you did not know about, right? And so from that dynamic, just go a little bit more. I just want to go back in Orchaim just a few minutes. And Orchaim's asking them a question. Okay, so he says, it is also possible that whereas Abraham's departure from Ur Kasdim that included the migration of his whole family, now God demanded that he leave his family behind. Abraham did not understand this correctly, and this is why he took Lot with him. Alternatively, Abraham did not understand that he was not supposed to take Lot with him, but the latter, he was so attached to him that he insisted for him to come along the way. But when the Torah says in chapter 12, verse 5, that he take Lot with him, this is meaning that he did not push him away until he found a suitable pretext, as he did not want to shame his nephew. As soon as Abraham found a minor pretext to separate from Lot, such as he did with the shepherds of Lot, and those of Abraham beget to feud, he used that incident as an excuse to separate from Lot. It is sound quite uncharacteristically for Abraham in the model of making people welcome in his environment to push someone away with both hands by saying, if you go right, I will go left. If you want to move left, I will go right. The fact that God had not communicated with Abraham for a while until immediately after his separated from Lot indicated that God was waiting for the moment when Lot could finally separate from him. So that he had to just be separated from all those forms of thinking. Only when God shows Abraham the extent of Lot, that he would eventually belong to his descendants, God delayed fulfilling the last part of the promise contained in our verse until Abraham got rid of Lot. Additionally, meaning the instructions to the instruction to Abraham to go for yourself, right? So it's interesting. So the term lech means go, to go. The lamet, the lech, to go, right? And then it says lecha, to yourself. So it means to go and find yourself. You have to leave behind the native land's consciousness where you come from. You have to leave behind the consciousness of your father's house to be able to find yourself in this land that only I can show you. And he says, go for yourself is not, he says, the additional meaning of the instruction to go for yourself is not so much that he was able to go alone, but that he was to benefit spiritually from this migration. Although man succeeded in this world, does even although man's success in this world does not depend on the amount of efforts he invests in material progress, as we know from the Psalms that says, for what lifts a man comes not from the east or the west or wilderness or hills. Our sages say that in every time the word Harim, the mountain, Harim, the mountain appears in the Bible. He says the mountain appears in the Bible. It means the mountains except in its instance. In Psalms, it says the word describes a spiritual uplift. This comment of our sages, notwithstanding the fact that the change of one's physical environment brings in an awake and an improvement in one's fortune, is not to be ignored. This is why God commanded Abraham specifically to leave your country. Either those sages say that there are three things that which do not actually constitute forbidden superstitions, even if one does pay attention to them. However, such attention borders on superstitions that are bet tanoki ve'isha. He says, if the enterprises undertakes includes one's house after a baby is born or after one has married turns out well, it may be taken as a good omen. If not, it is a sign that one should not preserve with that particular endeavor. He says, Rabbi Eliezer adds that one should not be influenced by such failures unless it occurs 3 times in succession. Also said, if one experiences bad luck in one place without moving to another place, one himself is to blame if one's fortune does not improve. He says, from your birthplace. So, see what I'm saying? So, from your birthplace. The lesson here is that living in a birthplace endangered by lions is preferable to living in a place surrounded by sinners, although the latter appears secure. In this part, and to a land that I will show you. God did not tell Abraham if he was meant to set out on a journey immediately or if he should wait until he would specify the exact location he wanted Abraham to move to. This ambiguity was part of the test to which Abraham subjected Abraham. God also hinted that he would show Abraham that the whole of the journey of Israel by broadening his vision. As we know that from 13 to chapter 13 to 14, lift his eyes to where he would look forward, southward, eastward, and westward. God hinted that Abraham should move to Eretz Israel as a land suitable to the presence of God to become manifest, and for people who are worthy to experience such a manifestation. It says in the Sifra and on the commentaries in the book of Numbers, it states that a full manifestation of God's presence depends on the Jewish people being in the land of Israel. According to the meaning of the word Ars Echad, is both. I will show you the land, and to you, and I will show you to it the land. One would not achieve its full fulfillment potential without the other. Okay, so the idea that we're holding on in this conversation is this idea of what does it mean to go on a spiritual journey? What does it mean to transform ourselves and to question ourselves and to reject things that we were raised with? And the thing is saying that when we got to be clear, it's not about saying that these things are not meaningless. We're not saying that these things didn't have value, these things didn't have impact. We can't look at the different experiences that Abraham had and say, oh, well, all those things were experiences, and now he should forget about all those things. It's like, no, those are the things that built him to the point of where he was. He built a relationship with God through those processes, right? Since even a child, I think all of us can relate that we've always had a sense of connection to God, even from our childhood, that maybe certain people around us didn't have, right? A certain sensitivity, a certain awareness, right? And so this is the spirit and the soul of Avraham. They always don't fit in, right? Completely, and it's for a reason. They're always going to have jealousy, but the people around them will know that there's something special about them, right? And so the idea here is to acknowledge this concept and say, hey, why is what's going on here? God commanded Abraham to do these things. And then we see through the exodus of Egypt that these things manifested organically. That these same concepts, the same idea of leaving your native land, the land that you were born in, your birthplace, right? Leaving the people around, the people who were in Mitzrayim. Some of these people were married and they left their wives and their husbands and their children behind. I think only 20% of the Israelites left. Everyone else is mixed multitudes, right? And so to say that there was families torn apart, it was humongous sacrifices these people made on this journey. And so my argument, I'm in the Middle East right now, right? The Middle East, you see all these countries, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, all these countries were created. Even if you want to say Israel exists as a Jewish homeland, okay, I agree. But these aren't the borders of Israel that we're living in. These are a fragment. The Israel borders go all the way to Syria. through Lebanon, right? All these places, right? And so this whole territory was man-made. When people talk about the Palestinians, the word Palestine was a name created 2,000 years ago by the Romans who were talking to the who were talking to who called the land of Judea Palestine, because it was a Greek word. They wanted to rename the territory, just like you see Trump say the Gulf of America. He changed it from the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America. I think that's what it was. And now he wants to change the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Gulf, right? Like they just named it. They named the whole region. Syria is created. Saudi Arabia is created. 1948, Saudi was created. Jordan created. Egypt created. All these places were all created. It's not the biblical Egypt. Biblical Egypt was Africa. It was a whole continent. So all these people who saying, I'm Egyptian, I'm Syrian, I'm Saudi Arabian, these things are all created. You think that place was called Saudi Arabia? That name is named after the family, House of Saud, Bet Saudi. This is what we call Saudi Arabia. They created it. 1948, same year Israel was created. So this idea of being able to separate ourselves and going to the place of saying, I am a human being first. I am a soul, and my soul developed a body through the sins of my ancestors being Adam and Chava. But my natural state is just to be a soul, a celestial being. So I went through this process. And now I have a body, and we're doing tikkuning. Like I think your wife said, she said, oh, so we're basically correcting all the sins from Adam and Eve. Exactly. To get to that place of immortality before death was created. That's the goal. Is to remove death from the world, to remove pain and suffering, to remove all these things that were created in that original disconnection. And we're doing that work now, and all the problems that we've had from men has been based off of that confusion. So if Avraham can do it, if the Israelites can do it, and they make greater sacrifices than us by far, we could at least sit back and have some of the critical thought and say that, what if I just decided to be human? Interesting story. So we used to, I was very involved in the Kabbalah Center, and my mother ended up coming to Kabbalah Center, and then that led my sister and my other siblings to eventually come. And that actually, was the precursor to my sister eventually converted to Judaism as well. But the reason why my mom started to work for the Kabbalah Center, because they had a program there called SFK, which is Spirituality for Kids. And they really wanted to branch it out internationally. And so somehow they had some connection to Malawi, in Africa, the east of Africa, whatever. And so they got Madonna to essence, put up, the money for this project in Malawi. So my mom eventually was hired by Madonna, right? And they did this whole project, and they brought over all these students from Malawi for my mom to basically train. Mom's a professor, she's in teacher education. She trains teachers. She gets PhDs in teacher education. That's what she does for a living, right? So that's what she does. So back then, she was at another university in teacher education in a similar dynamic, right? So she basically trained the teachers. She first turned the curriculum for the Kabbalah Center into codable language that can be used for schools, because there's a standard for schools, right? So she took I'm just trying to say, show my mom what level she's at. She transformed the Rav Berg's teachings and Rav Aslak's teaching, and those teachers are teaching, and put them into codified language with the Kabbalah Center which would meet the standards of school districts. That was locally. Internationally, they brought over students from Malawi, and she trained them in that very same curriculum, right? So she was the trainer. And so my mom told me, all of us, a story one time about the Malawi kids when she was working with them. And she said that the thing that blew her away about the Malawi people is that the kids in Malawi, these people are like in their 20s, right? They're young teachers, English speakers, the whole thing. They never knew, they never knew about slavery. They didn't know black people came over in slaves. They just thought black people migrated here over time like everyone else. They had no conception because it wasn't part of their curriculum, right? When they grew up in Malawi, Africa, they never knew that there was a transatlantic slave trade and that's how black people got here. And my mom used that as a discussion with all of us of saying, like, what is it to be a black person walking around in America with no notion of slavery ever existing? The pain, the suffering, the extension of that. What is it like? So you can see where I get this from, right? This didn't come from the Jews. I didn't convert to Judaism, and then all of a sudden I started questioning things. I grew up like that. The first day we went to private school, like early, like up until like third grade, maybe fourth grade. And the private school we went to was a Muslim school, and it closed down. So the first language I learned how to write was Arabic. This whole thing, right? We didn't speak it in the house, so it didn't really stick. But I think that why my brain was able to kind of like pick up Hebrew later on, much later. But I remember leaving school and telling my mom, well, okay, so we left that school and we had to go to public school, right? Because the school closed down. They had some little issue there. I don't know. But we went to public school, right? 54th Street School, right? And so I remember, and my mom every day would walk us to school and pick us up, right? She was that type of mom. And I remember walking home with my mom and explaining to her about Black History Month, because it was the first time I ever heard about it. You know what I mean? Like, Black History Month, the whole thing. So I'm telling my mom about it, and she's like, the thing's like this. Black and white are things that like people made up in America, right? This is my mom. They're things that people make up. We're humans. We live. But these are titles. These are names. These are things that were created, right? And I didn't really understand it. I was like in the fourth grade. I was like, why is my mom like not excited about Black History Month? Everyone in school is excited about it, but it was still kind of like um, it was still the first time that it was kind of this critical thought of Blackness. And my parents never really talked about Blackness. We lived the first part of my life in a Black community, like Ladera Heights. It's an upscale community. But so it wasn't like I just grew up around like all white kids and, I'm just detached from Blackness and, I don't know what's going on, this type of thing. That happened in the second half of my life when we moved to the Valley and that type of thing. But growing up, we grew up around African Americans. We played sports at a high level and, was on traveling teams. I grew up playing basketball with Baron Davis, Paul Pierce. They're a little bit older than me, but the point is saying I grew up playing with them, like in the same traveling team. I traveled around the United States, playing against other traveling teams. We were sponsored by K-Swiss, which was like, we were all in that, whatever. So we grew up around that. But the point is saying that aspect of Blackness was never really emphasized on us. Maybe because my parents were into Islam and that type of thing, maybe that played a role in it. And they weren't into like Black nationalist Islam. They were into like, proper Sunni Islam and then eventually got into Sufism. So whatever. So the point is saying maybe that probably had a lot to do with it. But the point is saying, so that aspect. So I'm not detached or I'm not like when I challenge these things, it's not that, but I gotta question things. Like I was talking to Otino about it earlier, and it's saying that we were talking about Rabbi Matthews, and I said to him, I said, well, you know what? What about, Elijah Muhammad, right? Black people coming off of, what was it, like less than maybe 60, 70, 80 years off of slavery, maybe 100 less, maybe 60, 70 years off of slavery. I don't have the exact time. When you look at the message of the Nation of Islam at that time, I can't criticize that. They were dealing with a man coming from a condition of being slaves for centuries. Like where there was no sense of human dignity, there was no sense of life, there was complete emptiness, complete restriction, right? And then even after that, they had mechanisms to reincarcerate, to create Jim Crows and all these other types of things. So they were dealing with the condition of the Black man from that time, right? That time. And so they were talking about Black pride and Black man is God and all these different things. But some things we could look at and laugh at now. Why did they say that? But that's where they were at that time, right? That's where they were at that time. And you can say the same thing by Rabbi Matthews. Is Rabbi Matthews more of an impact than Elijah Muhammad? I don't know. Maybe not, maybe yes. But that's not the point. The point is saying whether it's Rabbi Matthews, whether it's Rabbi Ford, or Elijah Muhammad, or Mahatma Gandhi, right? Or Alexander the Great, or King Harry. Any of these people, Louis the 14th, none of these people brought the concept of the purpose of creation. And unless I'm able to see that they brought that wisdom of the purpose of the creation and the purpose of our existence, I'm not saying a soundbite, because I could find you a lot of speeches from Louis Farrakhan and Wallace D. Muhammad and all those, and you take a soundbite, it's poetic. I could find you verses in the Torah that connect. So I'm not saying there was no teaching of godly wisdom. I'm not saying that there was no intention to help and evolve the people. But what I'm saying is attaching myself to the traditions of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to Moses, to Mount Sinai, to to entering the land of Israel, right? Establishing the temple. That lineage of thought, I can't say because my ancestors went through slavery that all of a sudden that, that's not my history, that's not my point of recognition. And even though there were people that had good intentions and moved things forward, like I said, I couldn't teach what I'm teaching potentially in 1920, 1910, right? I don't know if I could do that. Maybe I could, maybe I could. I wasn't there. I don't know. But the point is, that's what God provided at that time, right? And so my point is saying on that journey to getting to Mount Sinai, it's not about limiting that, but it's about being able to be shrewd and to separate and to say, like, yes, these things happen, and yes, these things have value. But my connection to wisdom only comes through the wisdom that is connected to the correction of the soul and the reunification to the Creator through the experiences given to us by God, being in the covenant of God through circumcisions, through Lador Vador, through these mechanisms, right, that are passed on for generations. Now, maybe Rabbi Matthews did write all these things. Like we learned Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, right? Okay, those are his thoughts. And I'm not criticizing that. But what I'm saying is, at what point do I say that, yes, I appreciate what my dad did. My dad's like a humongous person, humongously successful, made a ton of money, and pushed us to spirituality. He could have bought more homes, all type. He invested into us growing up. He invested into my mom, my sister. That's why they're professors. That's why she's married. That's why they have the life. My brothers, they're family men. They're businessmen, right? Nobody's been arrested. No one's been to jail, knock on the door. And I mean, if we made the mistake, the point is I'm just saying that those are the people I came from. But I have to understand the frame of reference my dad was coming from. He was being driven by God, by a spirit. I have the technology. And I got to make that distinction, because the problem with the focus on the Malcolm X's and the Martin Luther Kings and the Rabbi Matthews and the Elijah Muhammad's, when we focus on those people, we're not allowing ourselves to lech lecha, to find ourselves. We're looking to them that they have some secret wisdom that could benefit me today. And only if I was there, and only if I was around that, or this is what inspired me. No, the Spirit of God inspired you for Torah. Just like the Spirit of God. I didn't know about Rabbi Matthews up until a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. I didn't know about the Commandment Keepers. I saw pictures of black kids in Harlem, and there was a thing, but I never really looked into it. But I'm here. Otino says, hey, it was because of the stories of Rabbi Matthew's existence that made me perceive that I could be also a part of the Jewish tradition. I get it. But as I said, our people, in terms of spirituality, have only been on an advocacy level. Christianity, as we know it, we did not put it into our own thought. We took what they gave to us and made it poppin'. The black Christians saved Christianity through the black church, through the music, through the spirit, through the teachings, through the teachings, the gospels, the preaching, the whole thing. They saved the white man in his dynamic. African Americans get involved in Islam. You can't name me any bigger Muslims that ever existed than African American ones. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali. I mean, you could go down a ton of people. I don't even start name dropping, but the point is just Sharif Abdul Rahim. No, I'm just joking. But I mean, he's Muslim too. But I'm just saying. The point is just saying, like, the point is saying, we touched that Judaism. We're in that. But the point is saying, are we in Judaism from the standpoint of, oh, we're following a better system? Or are you following? You're connecting to the Torah and saying, no, this is my system. This is my inheritance, and I have a responsibility to master it. And not just in my own mind, in my own intellect, the way I want to do it and how I want to do it. No, I want to follow tradition because it's through that discipline, of the tradition that I'm able to put limitations on myself. And if I could put limitations on myself, I now create logic, I create parameters. And if I create parameters, this is the basis of in-depth logical reasoning. It's only through restriction. I went up to the Temple Mount with that girl, right? The video blogger. And she was like, yeah, I want to come up here and just be free. I don't want the police telling me where I can and can't go, and this and blah, 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 the whole thing. I don't want that. And it's like, but that's what the Muslims have. That's what even some of the Christians are all going to have. But the fact that we have limitations on here, that we have that limitation, this is what allows us uniquely to connect to the light here. When you're just walking around in this and it's just whatever, the fact that we have to say every step, I can't go this far because I could be in the place of Koret, which is, disconnection from God because I'm walking over the Holy of Holies and I'm not in a place of purity. Anyway, so that's the idea. I want to go a little further, but I want to hear your thoughts and responses. I know I brought a lot of ideas, but we're marching to Mount Sinai and we got to talk it out.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, good.
Okay, I think that the whole aspect of leaving the spiritual part, leaving your people, leaving the land, and leaving your birthplace and so forth is an excellent example of the journey that we have to go on, that journey that we've been on, as far as in filtering through the ideologies and looking at what the destination is, as far as in understanding that Torah over everything, right? Torah over everything. And so from that mindset, it's we can utilize many of the people in our lives and agree that different concepts and different peoples and different experiences, different activities throughout the earth and just experiences throughout the earth, events throughout the earth, we can utilize those things as things that become like stepping stones for us, that helps to push us towards or help us to climb this mountain, and then get to the ladder. And when we get to that ladder, now we have instructions on how to climb that ladder. And so it's one of those things to whereas it's all about growth and development, and just Staying focused on the destination itself. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so on that point, so that's the thing. And the thing is, it's not, like I said, I appreciate those things and they're all great. But it's like we have to take complete authority and leadership over our lives. Every single aspect. We are the boss of our lives. And we're such the boss of our lives, we put God we make God our boss, right? And all I'm saying is just saying that I want to be able to analyze the teachings of, say, Black Muslims, Black Christians, the writings of different scholars and different perspectives and different people. But I want to be completely in the Torah, in the wisdom of the sages when I go and make that jump over there. And I want to understand where they were at, where they lacked at, and where they were right at. Because through then I can help other people that are still looking towards that direction for guidance. Right? I'm supposed to help them. It's not about dissing Martin Luther King. He was a great man, full of courage, risked his life. So it's not putting him down. It's just saying what he was doing wasn't the solution. It was great. It was great. But the system that we live in will take a Martin Luther King and immortalize him so we stay distracted in that direction. That's what they want from us. They want us to be distracted. They don't want us, when I say us, the people who are in power, the people who are saying, you make this salary, you pay these taxes, you live here, we're going to change the law, we're going to do this, we're going to spend the money this way. Those people who are functioning in the animal level of people of power, the way that they keep the people on the mineral and the plant level under control is by giving them stories. Right? You've seen the movie Gladiators, right? Just put festivals together, they'll be distracted. They won't think about anything. So the point is to say that frame of reference, right? That frame of reference, being able to look at things critically and say, hey, you know what? You know what? I love everything, and everything's connected to me, but I have to put it in its proper order. And that when Adam was giving names to the animals, he was giving them their designation. You're over here, you're over there, you're over there, you're over here, you're over there, you're over here, you're over there. When Moses was on Mount Sinai, he took the people and said, you stand here, you stand there, you stand over here, you stand there, you stand here, this type of thing. So all I'm saying is that if I'm a human being first, and that human being, the root of it is a neshama, which is Adam, the light force of Adam. That's who I am. The body I have is a garment. So this is the beginning of my existence. Okay? So from that place, now I have to have shoftim. I have to have gates. I have gates. I have gates in my ears. I have gates in my eyes, my mouth, everything, right? I have all these gates around myself. So now Adam, a perfected Adam, a corrected Adam, says, what am I going to let into my life? What information am I going to let in my gates? And I have the power to determine what my narrative is, what my history is. And any other ideas that does not make me empowered, that does not make me more courageous, that does not make me more inspired, that does not make me more loving, that does not make me more confident, that does not make me more forgiving, that does not express my potential, any thought that comes to me that says anything opposite of that, I have the responsibility to reject it. You are wrong. Whoever says that, you are wrong. You are wrong. You are not my report card. You do not give me a grade. You do not tell my story. You do not have that power. And the only way to access that power is through complete connectivity to Hashem and his will and his messages and his messengers. And anything outside of that, I reject it. So what happens from here? Now I'm going to go on an adventure. I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to see people. I'm going to go to libraries and I'm going to read books. And I'm going to see what other people's thoughts were at different times and this idea and ideas that are connected to people who maybe have a similar genetic to me, right? Maybe similar life experiences based off of the social conditions of this generation. And I'm going to see their thoughts. But I'm going to ask myself, is this person, were they in the illusionary reality, which is the reality of the five senses? Or were they in the real reality, which is the reality of the soul, which is something that's beyond my senses and beyond my logic, and I can only connect and comprehend it through the wisdom of the Creator? Either I see everything and I know what's going on around me, and then I make good decisions or bad decisions, or I only can see a limited reality. I'm not very different than a blind person who's being held by either he has a guidance cane, which is the Torah, or someone's literally holding its hand, which is God's angels moving us forward. But the bottom line is still we as people need a guidance system. And the ego wants to tell us, no, we don't need to do that. You're in a compromised situation. You should do this. So anyways, that's just some thoughts on this concept of just building and building. And it's okay. We can love everything. It's all good, but it does not determine me. And especially us African Americans, you can really say with everybody, but the system what we live in has declared war against us. Okay? They declare war against us. We may have not acknowledged that. We may pretend that we're so accustomed to this attack against us that it's all good, but they have attacked us in our food. They have attacked us in our medical care. They have attacked us in our nutrition. They have attacked us in our imagery, our media. They have attacked us in our education system. They have attacked us in our spirituality. Everything has been wiped out. Everything has been wiped out. Everything has told me I'm less than. The school system, as a black man, I am less than. Media, as a black man, I am less than. Medical care, I will not receive the best because I am a black man. Nutrition, I receive the bottom because of who I am. So I can't lie to myself. There's a war against me, worse than Gaza. Gaza, you know where the bullets are coming from. You know where the rockets come from. Here, they make it seem like, no, it's all good, man. Go and get that gold chain. Yeah, man, what you worry about? Hey, that woman over there, disrespect her. Disrespect her. Get her, man. So I'm under attack. And so they've used black characters, black universities, black colleges, black professors, black politicians, dressed up in blackface, but with the message and intentions of my enemies. So I accept that I'm at war. That's why I can't go out and sin. Because I got people that want to see me destroyed, and they're only empowered by a spiritual source called the Sitra Akra that also wants to see me destroyed. Why? Because you are restricting. Anyone who's restricting with the consciousness of God is the enemy of the Satan. He wants me finished. Chief Rabbi Pinchas wants him finished. All the people we're learning, once it's finished, we're out. Because if we make changes and we go to the white man and we go to the yellow man and the Asian man and the Saudi Arabian man and all this and say, you guys we had a false narrative about who we are. And that false narrative kept us small. But we rejected that narrative. And we became humans again. And we became connected to Adam, the first Adam before the sin, before the good and bad consciousness that comes from the narrative that they're giving us. We went back to the Etz HaChaim, the tree of life. We went back to that consciousness. And so now we're free. And you need to do the same. You, white person, need to free yourself as well and go back to being a human. The same thing with you, Chinese man, and Persian man, and Arab man, and Caribbean man, whatever you want to call it, Puerto Rican. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
My wife got a question, then I have a question.
No, I had to ask about something totally different. You could go ahead. I'll wait.
Yeah, you know, it's my thoughts my thoughts were going towards, you know, um, when we think about the aspect of what society tells us that we are, okay. Now, from a general standpoint, or universal standpoint, the the world tells us um, that we are, you know, through entertainment, our trends dictate, you know, or try to tell the human race how they should act, what is trendy, what is cool, and so forth. And then you have, you know, when we deal going back towards colonialism and all of those things, there you have a whole nother, you know, aspect of categorizing and just telling the human race what they are. And all parties are affected by this.
Yep.
And so at at that point, can we say that we can all go back and say, you know, I'm a human being, I'm Adam, but also I think for the Jewish people, for Jews around the world to say, you know, hey, I'm not, I'm not, I'm not a dog, I'm not an animal, I'm not a devil, I'm not any of these things. I'm not a beast. But you know, I'm of Abraham. I'm of Abraham from the aspect of one that is going to be a blessing and a vessel that is going to receive and share for the whole world. And and what's beautiful about what you're saying is that we remove the limitation. We remove the world's limitations and the world's yokes, and we take upon us the yoke of Abraham. We take upon us the yoke of Isaac, of Jacob. We take those yokes upon us, and those yokes are of restraint, are powerful. They empower us. They give us the kavana that we need. They give us the level of understanding of how to manage this world, how to manage humanity, and how to heal humanity. So is that like, I just want to make sure, is that what, like?
Yeah, I'm saying that. I'm saying that. But what I'm saying is that there is wisdom right now from people who are not Jewish and people who are of the other denominations and other things. But the only way we could extrapolate what is what and what isn't is by having the Torah lens as we go into it. And to have the Torah lens is that. And I keep focusing on the human because at the end of the day, even the concept of Jewish is not us as a people. We're Israelites. We're Israels. And we're tribes. We're not Jews. We're not Ashkenaz. We're not Sephardic. We're not Mizrahi. These are all Goyish terms created by non-Jews, and we hold by them. And to this day, we're separated in the land of Israel because of that. Hence, we got enemies breathing down our necks because we're separated. So all Ashkenaz is a fake concept. Sephardic is a fake concept. These are not Judaism. This is not the Torah, right? This is not who we are. Now, someone will say, oh, how could you say that? Okay, because that's the truth. Show me in the Torah where it says this. These are people, these are communities, and we respect it. It's all part of the diaspora, but it's fake. We are a nation of tribes. We are a nation. Our goal is not to be in synagogues. It's not to be in yeshivas. It's to be on the base of Mikdash. It's to be on the Har Bayit. That's where our focus should be as a community, so we are struggling in that. So that's why I'm pushing the soul concept, because the Western society that's brainwashed us as Black people brainwashed Jews too. Many of them believe in academia. Trust me, I've been in debates about it.
You know,
So go ahead.
you know that this is good. This is good. This is good.
You know I
This
had
is
it in
good.
me. You know I had it in me.
Come on, Rabbi. Listen, this is good because this is the concept that, and that could be a whole class about this particular subject matter. The effects, and we're gonna take away the word colonization and take out, because but we're going to looking at the aspect of how the evil inclination has affected mankind. How has it affected humanity? So much to the point that mankind builds constructs and builds ideologies from itself that do not derive from Hashem, that does not derive from creation. Matter of fact, goes against and it is in direct opposition to creation. So much so that it does it causes the soul of man to basically cut itself off from the creator in many ways. In many ways. So all of the ideologies would fall under that umbrella.
Yeah, 100%, and that's the battle that we're up against. We have to educate people. The only way we could start this discussion of what's fake and what's not fake is by dealing with the soul. That's it. I thought about it. I've given maybe thousands of lectures, the whole thing for years, almost a decade now. The whole thing comes down to the soul. That's the only way that we could unwrap this klipa that has everyone in this mental bind, everybody. You can't be racist and a Jew if you're focused on the soul. You can't. It's no way. And I'll say here, one of the inspiring things about here in Israel, there's a whole youth movement, young professionals that are on this concept of decolonization. And they're going into the different traditions, the minhagim, different traditions, different stringencies, and they're saying, wait, this is a minhag, this is strategic, this was created in Europe, this was created in Spain, this was created in North Africa. How is it applicable now that we're in the land of Israel? So that discussion's happening with thousands of people, thousands, right? So it's a real thing and it's happening, and they call it decolonization. So colonization, this is what the Jews are saying in Israel right now. They're saying we're in a decolonization movement. There's even a movement that some people stop wearing kippas. They're wearing wraps now. You know what I mean? It's a real thing. People are trying to figure it out. But the argument on our side is the soul. And it's the most powerful argument because once you go to the soul, then you have to connect to what the soul needs. Light. Where does the light come from? God. How does it manifest? Through Israel. Now, if you're going to say the light manifests a different way, please, by all means, show us. Please, by all means, show us. And that's the most powerful argument a black man could make to white people. Like, hey, you know that the story and everything about myself was false. I'm going to tell you who I really am. I'm not going to say my name is X. I'm Adam. I'm Adam. And guess what? So are you. You are also Adam. Right? Oh, well, we're brothers under JC. No, we're not. We're Adam. We are soul. The body we have is just a garment. We are Adam. That is the life force inside of us. If you do not receive light, you suffer. The pain that you feel is from a lack of light. The racism and the hatred you feel for other people is because of a lack of light. And the people who told you and inspired you and invigorated your hatred were the ones who are subjugating you to even more darkness in your education system, in your media, in your diet. That's what white person could defeat that argument? What white community can defeat that argument today? Today. Show them quantum physics. The human eye. How you say I'm black and you're white? You can't even see me. You're seeing an image that was implanted in your head. You are a slave. When is the black person ever say that to a white man? You are a slave, man. You walk around here with hatred in your heart, discrimination in your veins of God's creation. What is your condition as a human being? Are you a human being? Do you have empathy? Are you a human being? The sages say what makes us different from animals is empathy. Show me your empathy. I'm here to free you. I'm here to free you from that slavery. You know what my mom said? She said the reason why they made Malcolm X and these guys so famous to scare white people away from Islam. He said that's what they was worried about. That's why they put Malcolm X and the white man's the devil, and they put him on the news and that. They wanted to keep white people as far away from any type of Eastern connection in this way. And you see what Islam is doing to white people in Europe. They're converting like nothing, bro. So the point is just saying that this is where we're at. This is the battle. You know, this is the battle. We have power over everything once we accept who we are. When Moses stands in front of Pharaoh, after hundreds of years of fear and intimidation that the Israelites had, he stood in front of them as an equal. And God was above them. From there, over time, Pharaoh became his servant. Egypt eventually became their servants. Egypt's wealth became their wealth. But it's when they took the frame of equal, not supremacy. We're all equal under God. That changes the game. Your enemies cannot deal with that. They don't have a solution for that. So our power is the fact that America said, y'all ain't really American, man. Y'all Black Americans. Y'all not really humans. Y'all 3/5 of a human being. All these things are the greatest gifts. Why? Because we need to separate from their thinking. And not only us, so does the white person. He doesn't benefit. That's why he voted for Donald Trump. They robbed him too. He ain't got nothing. He ain't got, like 50 Cent, you ain't got nothing. You ain't got nothing in that South and that Midwest. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, right, go ahead.
The question you said, about, just accepting, that the power is in accepting who you are. Like, okay, so what does that look like, and how does that manifest? Like,
Nice.
how does that
Wait,
manifest?
hold on. Wow, they're firing rockets right now as we speak. Are you kidding me? This is crazy. Anyways, all right, we're good. We're gonna tough it out. Anyways, but the point is like this. So, wow. It's a big deal. Trump is in Saudi right now, right? They just gave off a hostage. And so now, whatever, man, this is crazy. Anyway, so the point is like this. So how does that manifest? So every morning we wake up, right? And the first thing we say is, we say, Modi ani lifanecha malach chaim vechaim. He says, thankful I am before you, the King who is living and ever enduring. She chacha zerat. He says, and you have restored me, be nishmati. With my soul within me, make chala. He says, with mercy, Rabbah. Emuna te'echa. He says, with great faithfulness, right? This is
Modiani.
That's Modiani.
yeah, that's the beginning. That's the first thing we say in the morning. When we say that in the morning, what we're accepting is instantly that God, who gave us life, the living God, has restored my soul within me. So from that beginning of that process, the Modiani, that process, I am now accepting that I am a soul that God has placed into this body. And me accepting that I have a soul, then I have to say, what is the next thing that my soul needs, right? What's the next thing that I need? Purification. The second thing after that is I go and I say the bracha, Betzivani al netilat yadayim. And by doing that, I now purified my body, right? Just by washing my hands in the correct way and saying that bracha, I've now purified my body through my hands in my body, allowing my soul to not have any disconnection between me and the creator, right? Because the klipa, because when we go to sleep, it's an aspect of death, right? So we have to cleanse ourselves. That's why our hands feel gross and sticky when we wake up. We got to remove that klipa. Then after we do Netilat Yadayim, right? After we do Netilat Yadayim, we could go to the bathroom, right? And this is the concept of releasing any toxins, any things that is inside of us we need to let go. But after we say Asher Yatzar, the bracha for the bathroom, this is what we say after that. It says Ve Elohe Nashma Shena Tata Bi Tahara. So he says, my soul, he says, my God, the soul that you have placed within me, Torah is pure. Ata, Varata. He says, you've created Ata. He says, Yisarata, you formed it. Ata. He says, Nafachta. He says, and you breathed it. Be into me. Ve'ata. He says, and you, Masara. He says, has preserved it. Bir kirbi. He says, within me. Ve'ata, Ati. Lit la. He says, and in the future time, you will take it from me. Mimeni, from me. Ulecha chazira. And to restore it, be le'ati, in a time to come. He's talking about Mikayi Hamatin, the resurrection of the dead. And he says, level at a time. He says, Kol Zaman. He says, in all the time, She'ad Neshama, all that the soul, Birki, is within me. Modi Ani, thankful I am, Lifaneka, before you, Hashem. Elohai, Elohei, Avotai. He says, my Father, my God, my God, and God of my fathers. Rebo Kol Ma'asim. He says, in the master of all creation, Adon. He said, the Lord of Kol HaNashamot, of all the souls. He says, blessed are you, Hashem, Hamachazir Nashamot Lefigari Matin, who restores the soul to the dead bodies. So the acknowledgement that I am a soul. The whole morning brachot is connected to the soul, and then it goes into creation. So if I'm a soul, what does my soul need? It needs light. What does my soul need me to stay away from? Impurities. Impurities of thought, impurities of other issues, all these different impurities I need to stay away from. And so the morning process is a way that we set a series of affirmations that draw spiritual light to us, that cleanse us, right? And allows us to become in that frame of Adam before the Het, meaning that we have a purification, that we have a recognition of our soul, and we know what our soul needs. This is it. So when I turn on television or I turn on listen to music, I got to ask myself, is this music helping my soul or is it hurting my soul? If I'm going to go and eat breakfast, is the food that I'm eating helping my soul or hurting my soul? If I'm going to have a conversation with my siblings, my parents, my friends, is this conversation in gossip or things that are going to hurt my soul or help my soul? This is how we take back our power. And if people come to me with information or society tries to give me information, I have to reject it first and say, stop sign, pause. I have to critique who you are before you come into the holy temple. I have to make sure that your intentions in your body and the things that you're doing are pure, or you will defile what's inside of the holy temple. Who's the holy temple? Me. So me waking up in the morning and defining myself as a soul and seeing my daily experience through the reality of the soul, not the pleasures of the body, but the reality of the soul. And so I'm using the brachot, I'm using the prayer 3 times a day. I'm using studying Torah throughout the day. I'm using these things to keep me aware that the soul is in front of me. The soul is leading me. And all the things that I do to disconnect myself from God's will is damaging my soul, Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Total.
All right, so let's end it here. You know, we're battling out. We're just trying to get to Mount Sinai. It's hard. It's hard. You know, I'm telling the people in India, we had some problems the last couple of weeks with the class, but this is the spirit of the shir. You keep it going, even if there's one person in it. You just keep it going. Why? Because that light that you create at the times that you study is there, and so you want to keep manifesting that light, right? So the thing is, we're moving to Mount Sinai, and so we just got to move forward and forward and forward, and all is good. All is good. Hey, they're shooting rockets right now at your boy, and we're getting through it. Why? Because we're learning the Torah. We're afraid. We're afraid. If something happens in my life, it was already determined way before that bomb was shot or fired. We're all good. Baruch atah Adonai leolam amen.